Hello and welcome. I'm Digital Assistant Tamara, and this is the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities podcast. This is our second interview in a series of interviews that we're holding over the next wee while on our YouTube channel. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss an episode. Of course, we couldn't have a series of challenging poverty interviews without the creators of Challenge Poverty Week themselves, Poverty Alliance. So I would like to give a very warm welcome to our guest today, Fiona from Poverty Alliance, Research and Information Manager, I believe. So welcome, Fiona, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us on.
No problem. For the first question, of course, for those just maybe who aren't familiar with Poverty Alliance and what they do, could you maybe just tell us a little bit about it and what your role is within the organisation?
Yep, certainly. So Poverty Alliance are Scotland's national anti-poverty network. So what we do is try and provide a united anti-poverty voice across Scotland, and we do this in a number of different ways. We do research, we do campaigning, we do work around real living wage, so all sorts of different kind of areas of work looking at all aspects of poverty and inequality. Obviously, we've just come to the end of Challenge Poverty Week, which has been a really, really successful week in terms of raising anti-poverty messages from right across Scotland. So this is something we can pick up in more detail today.
Yeah.
And in terms of my role, I head up our research teams. So that's all the kind of different research and information strands across our organisation and producing evidence on issues that we identify through our work that are important to kind of contribute to a bigger evidence base, or in some cases add to an evidence base that isn't already known now.
Okay. So we're going to move on to our public submissions part of the episode now. I do have my notes here and I want to make sure that I'm putting everything across correctly. So if you see me looking down, I'm just trying to get everything right. But yeah, for our first question, national living wage is claimed to be independently calculated based on living costs. However, one of our users finds that even with 2 full-time incomes on this wage, plus additional payments of child disability allowance for their child and living in social housing, they still find themselves living paycheck to paycheck and really struggling. Their question is, do you feel that national living wage is accurately calculated by today's living standards?
So it's important to distinguish for us between the real living wage, which is a voluntary scheme, and the national living wage. So the real living wage, which is something we head up in Scotland, is the only UK wage rate that attempts to reflect living costs in its calculation. So this is higher than statutory wage rates and incorporates the price of goods and services as well as different family types into its calculation. But the amount that each household requires will obviously be dependent on their own personal circumstances. But the real living wage is a kind of averaged out benchmark for wages that employers operating across the country are encouraged to implement as a minimum, which is going much further than the government minimum.
Amazing. Okay. Our next question is regarding transport. Public transport being more affordable and accessible was a policy as being put forward by Poverty Alliance. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you see local authorities with a large rural population achieving this given all the recent cuts to bus routes in those areas?
Yep, so transport absolutely is a critical issue across communities in Scotland. Something the research team did a couple of years ago was looking at transport research specifically around child poverty and what that meant. And many of the households we spoke to in rural areas were really sharing stories about the limitations that poor public transport had in their lives in terms of access to jobs, access to, social activities, access to friends and family, and just the real impact that those severe costs were having on daily budgets. So it's a really, really kind of important area and something that we've been building an evidence base on for quite a long time. We've also kind of heard a lot in another project we're working on just now, Serving the Future, where we've heard a lot from people working in the hospitality sector in rural areas around the importance of transport and how that interlinks with their opportunities and employment. For us at Poverty Alliance, we've got a kind of number of different policy asks around transport. So we want to kind of expand concessionarised travel for those who are in receipt of low income, disability benefits, unpaid carers, students, modern apprenticeships, asylum seekers, because obviously a lot of current schemes, aren't extended to everyone they should be. We want also to try and think about more integration around transport, and expanding concessionary travel to include all modes of transport. So thinking about things like ferries, trams, rail and so on, and thinking just about how that can work across different forms of transport, because often, again, there's limitations in terms of what people can access. And again, we really want more work done across local authorities in terms of the design of public transport services, routes, thinking about, do the routes and provision that's available work to help the local communities, and if not, how can they be changed and redesigned, because it's really important that we do redesign and work to create systems that work effectively for people in different circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so our next question. There is a harsh cutoff from things like free school meals, clothing grants, and help to attend school trips. A member of the public states that if they earn as little as £1 more over their current regular income, this sort of help is immediately cut off and seen as not needed anymore. Their question is do you think that free school meals should be given to all school-age children? They feel that this would tackle the stigma against the children in poverty and avoid harsh cut-offs for the parents like these.
Absolutely. I think this question really, really illustrates the challenges that we face when we put thresholds and how we put parameters and, think about things like tapers within policy implementation. And absolutely, this question highlights, particularly right now when we know food insecurity is growing and rising, the absolute need for universal provision of things such as free school meals. And this would certainly help remove some of the problems that threshold-based approaches often mean in practice. This is something that we see time and time again in anti-poverty policy, as challenges and transition points and thresholds. So, for people in work, particularly in rural areas where there's seasonality, you may be moving in and out of employment. And again, when you're exiting and the time it can take for systems and support to kick in, challenges in terms of eligibility. And again, things like taking a universal approach would help kind of even out some of these challenges that are, I think, particularly unique and experienced more acutely in rural areas. And of course, the right to food, full stop, is a human right, and it's not just about thinking about provision of things like free school meals, but also ensuring that people have income adequacy, choice and dignity, full stop. And we're also tackling those kind of core drivers around food insecurity in terms of income levels.
Okay, and for our last question, stigma and negative assumptions are still something that people on benefits face all the time, like in the media, across social media. They're seen as scroungers, lazy, all these other negative terms. Despite the fact that 38% of universal credit claimants are actually in active employment, how do you and Poverty Alliance recommend that these stigmas be tackled?
Okay, so stigma is an issue that comes up.
Yeah.
Stigma is an issue that comes up time and time and time again in our work, and it's been something that we've been doing a lot of work on for a really long time. Again, those facts and figures and how universal credit is understood and portrayed in the media, are often not representative of what's actually going on. So we don't hear much about, it's very much presented around in terms of in work poverty, around people aren't working and so on. And we very, very rarely hear about the focus on universal credit is there to kind of effectively support people on low income work as well.
Yeah.
And the challenges that people are facing in terms of employers paying low wages and so on, and that's why people are needing that kind of form of social security as well. In terms of how we tackle this, I think it's a big job to tackle stigma. I think it's difficult to fully understand how it's experienced, when it's experienced, by who it's experienced, in what circumstances. Something that we've been working on at Poverty Alliance is trying to create a stigma measurement tool. We know here anecdotally a lot about different experiences of stigma. We don't really have a robust measurement in Scotland to actually understand who is it impacting on the most, and what circumstances, and in what form are they experiencing it. So this has been something we've been working with UWS, Strathclyde University and Mental Health Foundation to develop a measurement, and we're currently analysing some data that we've conducted from a UK-wide survey of 1,000 people around from low and middle-income households around experiences of stigma. So that's something we are certainly, once we've done that analysis, going to try and take forward. But I think there's a key opportunity in terms of until we actually effectively measure the experiences of it, we don't really understand the scale and the levels of which it's been experienced of. And I think having better data and understanding this would certainly help us create better responses to that. More generally, though, I think there is opportunities when we work with communities directly and already hear from some of the evidence that has already come forward. Something that we were involved in with the Making It Work project in Fife was actually creating a stigma toolkit. And we worked with families, including children and young people, to hear about their experiences of stigma, to understand where they were experiencing it. We created video tools and other interactive tools so that people who are working in services and organisations can use that toolkit to kind of improve and think through some of these hidden issues. So that's certainly something that we would, recommend that MD who wants to do work in challenging stigma kind of looks at as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think this has been a really great conversation, really informative as well. You've answered all of my questions really well. Well, they're not my questions, but yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And for those listening at home, we will link our social media channels in the description. We'll link Poverty Alliance in the description, as well as their website for all. You can check that out for all of the amazing work that they've done so far and are still doing to tackle poverty across communities. And thank you again, Fiona, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.